Here to talk about all of this is forensic and clinical psychologist Dr. Daniela Schreier. Doctor, thank you for joining us. You know, I think the thing that is so ironic in all of this is that Ariela Neuman, the wife of Hemy Neuman, was the one that got the resume of Andrea-Sneiderman, gives it to her husband, says, here's somebody you might want to hire. Her name is Andrea-Sneiderman. And look what happens.
Yes, correct. Isn't it ironic? You know, she was thinking she's doing something good to help someone, and basically that was the death sentence for her marriage, right? And also, it's very interesting. I mean, she really is right now surviving the death of a relationship because that's what she's going through. I mean, it's divorce, separation, discovering that her husband all of a sudden goes out with a 13-year younger woman. That's a huge issue, and emotionally it takes a toll on the self-esteem, also maybe blaming herself and asking herself initially, oh my God, I passed on the resume. Could it not have come differently? I should have never done that. And then now standing not only in front of emotional abandonment, but really financial ruin, because he left the house, or she said actually she would have asked him to leave in October 2010, but there's no financial security. She stated that her husband, in the entire lifetime, basically was very free with his money, and he was thrill-seeking or excitement-seeking, but she also said he was never crazy, and there's no evidence that he ever betrayed her before. So truly, she's the victim in the entire story here, correct?
You know, doctor, here's what I want to ask you. What is going to be the hardest for her to comprehend and live with as time goes on? The affair, or the fact that her husband is a convicted murderer? He's a killer.
Yeah, actually, Jean, I think interesting, because she told us that. She was sitting down for a very brief interview, and I reviewed it, and she said the hardest thing is it's a traumatic journey, and it will take a long time to get over it, half a lifetime as a man. But she says, really, can you ever know somebody truly, truly? And you cannot, because she said the most traumatic thing is that this man could commit such a terrible crime. And I was married to him. I had no indication that he would ever be violent. She stated that he was very arrogant throughout his lifetime, and there might be a little anger from her side too. But she said the hardest thing to deal with is that he was really committing that crime. She said also he murdered someone, and she does not feel pity for him, and he should be punished. And this is what she said.
Right, and Ariela said, quote, he was arrogant, a risk taker his entire life. He loved to feel his heart beat fast, but he was not crazy. He never acted strangely. You know, right before we went to air, I spoke with Ariela's attorney, Esther's Panich. And she said that Ariela is doing the best she can, that she still is not over this, but step by step, day by day, she's making it through. The one thing I want to ask you is, in regard to Ariela, how does she ever trust again? Because she's got multiple issues of betrayal of trust, not only the affair, but other aspects too. How does she trust?
Emotionally and financially, she has been betrayed. She is alone. She's taking care of 3 children, and she has the loss of a just world, as we call it. Kind of, life is not fair. Why is that happening to me? Couple of things. I think we have seen her as an emotionally very strong lady. She's working 3 jobs, and she says, I'm deserving better. I'm willing to move on. So she will need time to heal. That can take from months to 2 or 3 or even 4 years. And I think she will have to go very slowly, because she lived for 23 years with someone who turned out to be very different. So it does not mean that she will never trust again, but I think it's a slow process. She will have to give herself time, also reminding herself not everyone is like Hemy. Yes, she might meet another arrogant man, but that does not make him a person who is betraying her or murdering somebody. So it will take a little longer for her even to come back to baseline, just knowing, my God, how do I get my feet on the ground financially? Because he really left her high and dry.
You know, here, doctor, here's what's interesting. A couple facts I learned. The divorce was final in May of this year. As part of the divorce settlement, she is going by another name now because she's very recognizable in the Atlanta area. And my question to her attorney was, has she spoken to Hemy Neuman? She only spoke to him once, when he was arrested, and she didn't know anything of what was happening. She talked to him in jail. He called her, and she said, stay strong. And then as the facts came out, she never spoke with him again. Should she talk to him to try to get some answers? Will it be something, a wound that will never heal because after 23 years, she's never said a word again to him?
I think closure you're not getting from the person who leaves you, because some of them might come back after 10 years and apologize. Closure you have to find yourself. And I think she did the right thing. As such, she said, we deserve better. I have to move forward. For her, I think the case is closed. She has to heal from the betrayal. And I think once she found out what he had done, it's not only the betrayal, but also he has taken the life of another person. She also said, Jean, which is very important for us, that when she saw him testifying in a court, she did not believe him. She said he was crying only for himself. He did not shed one tear for his own family. And I think this is where she has caught on. She thinks, in my opinion, that he left us. He didn't have a second thought what he was doing to our adult, now nearly adult children, and to me. He did all that for himself and for another woman. And I think this is how she helps herself to move on. I deserve better. Closure she gets from herself, not from Hemy.
So is that anger that helps her to go on? Because here's another fact. Hemy Neuman was not at their 17-year-old daughter's birthday party. You know why? He was out target practicing with the brand new gun that he had just gotten. Will that anger, as she reflects back on things just like that, help her to have the confidence and the strength to go forward?
Most definitely, if she can direct it in the right direction, and I think she's doing that. You know, the death of a relationship is very much a grieving process, like when you lose someone who is very important in your life. You're going through different phases, right? At the beginning, probably she thought, oh my God, is that happening, right? Then the second one would be, there might be some depressive feelings coming up, and it's not linear, the stages. They come and go. Depression, what do I do now? Anxiety, a future alone, and then anger. At one time, we really need to be angry. And it doesn't mean that you have to hit someone, but you have to talk about it, and it has to be expressed. And I think she's doing that. People who don't express their anger keep it inside. And what do we know when we turn anger inside? It turns into depression. So I do think we have to be angry, and also knowing, no, I don't deserve that. I didn't cause that. The person made that choice. That's fine, but I can separate myself from it. And I think what keeps her strong is that she says she has 3 adult children. They're still a healthy family, and that helps her to move forward. But she cannot be angry forever, because that will hold also other people far away from her. So she will have to come back to baseline.
Exactly. All right, doctor, thank you so much for joining us. And to Ariela Neuman, we have not forgotten you. You are a victim in this case. Rusty Sneiderman lost his life. We know that, and that is the victim, but you are not forgotten either. To Dr. Daniela Schreier, here's one thing I want to ask you, because I was shocked and surprised when I spoke with Bob Rubin, the attorney for Hemy Neuman, and I asked him, was Hemy medicated during the trial? Because if he's mentally ill and he has bipolar and they're claiming insanity, one would think he'd have a little bit of medication in him. He said he had no medication at all in him during the trial. It didn't seem like he ever had medication. Are you surprised by that?
Well, now again, I'm not a prescriber, but I am surprised by that. It means I was working before in the correctional setting, and generally, especially when you have bipolar 1, this is what they claimed, right? It's the big brother of bipolar 2. So you have manic episodes, you have major depressive episodes. Generally, all my patients will be on medication for bipolar 1. And if they go off their medication, at least by my experience now, there is disturbances coming up. So it's very surprising that he did not take any medication. It doesn't hold true to actually the diagnostic facts that were presented in trial, or that he was found that he might have been bipolar all his life. Even people on bipolar 2, which is much less severe, are on medication to stabilize their moods mostly.
And this would be the time one would think one would need that medication. Sunny Hostin, your response and reaction to the fact that Hemy Neuman, who was found guilty by reason of mental illness, guilty but mentally ill, was not on any medication during his trial.
I was shocked at that, especially because we know that sometimes with this sort of episodic mental illness, there are stressors and stress-related episodes. And so what more stressful time is it than being on trial for murder where the result could be spending the rest of your life in prison. So I'm shocked at that fact, Jean, and quite frankly, I'm also shocked that there was no history of bipolar disorder. I mean, in my experience with people that have this disorder, it manifests itself, and you see it. You see the manic episodes, you see the depressive episodes, and there's just no way that, in my mind at least, and again, I'm not a clinician and I'm not an expert, but I do know people with bipolar disorder. There's just no way in my mind that someone would be suffering some sort of manic episode and no one takes notice, that they just keep on about their day supervising other people, business as usual. It's one of the things about this insanity defense, quite frankly, that has bothered me.
You know, Sonny, as we look at Hemy Neuman and we watch him, in one sense, he's a lucky man because he planned this out with the wig and the renting of the car and getting the gun. I mean, it was so planned out, and the jury could have found him guilty, plain and simple. They found guilty but mentally ill, so he's going to be allowed to have psychological sessions to help him with everything that happened, and I consider him to be a lucky person to be able to get that in prison.
Yeah, I mean, you know, bottom line is I think his defense team and Bob Rubin especially, they were disappointed with the result here because they wanted a not guilty by reason of insanity and for Hemy Neuman to at least get treatment in a mental facility as opposed to being in prison. But you're right, you know, he is, in a sense, quite lucky. I think that was a good verdict for him because while he'll spend the rest of his life in prison, at the very least, he'll get treatment if, in fact, he needs it.
Right. Exactly. All right. I want to thank all of my guests. Dr. Daniela Schreier, thank you so much for joining us. Clinical psychologist joining us out of Illinois, and Sonny Hostin, In Sessions, legal contributor and legal analyst. Thanks so much.